Hey Internet, it's RJ. Welcome back. Thanks for tuning into this show today. Now today is Sunday, so you know what that means. We're going around the net with all the news you can use in the week that was in credit and finance. Now, on the docket for today, as we're coming off of a holiday week, there was really only one major story, but it is a good one because it features everyone's favorite phone maker, Apple. We have Goldman Sachs and American Express. So we're going to break that down for you now. So of course, if that sounds interesting to you, go ahead, press the subscribe button, and let's get to work. Now, of course, the story at hand here is that Goldman Sachs, who owns the Apple Card portfolio, is shopping this portfolio to American Express. Now, it's been, a few years since Goldman Sachs and Apple have made the Apple Card. The Apple Card used to be with Barclays, but that was a totally different version of that. Now we have a new one focused on Apple Pay and things like that, a much better version. So much so that Goldman and Apple actually extended their deal through, I think, the rest of this decade. So it seems like everything will be going fine. You have a marquee name like Apple, a somewhat marquee name in banking, more of the Wall Street banking than consumer banking in Goldman Sachs. So why would they want to sell it? Well, the Cliff Notes version is, again, Goldman Sachs has been trying to break into, I'll say, retail or regular people banking for some time now. You might be more familiar with the Marcus name. They have a Marcus savings account. At one point, they had a Marcus checking account, and they got rid of that. They also have the GM portfolio of credit cards. And of course, what's probably the crown jewel is the Apple Card plus the Apple savings account that just came out maybe a few weeks ago. So you would think starting a consumer division and landing an Apple contract would guarantee success, but that is not the case. Now, it's been reported, for the better part of a year now that, Goldman Sachs is losing quite a bit of money on this deal. Now, some of it I think is a little bit misconstrued, but overall, if you break it down, these co-branded cards, which is basically a card between Apple being a partner and then a bank like Goldman Sachs, kind of co-branding a card together. These cards have similar goals between companies, but also much different goals from the standpoint that the Apple Card primarily exists to sell more iPhones, right? A big part of it is, having built-in financing so you can get the new iPhone every year, get your new Mac every year, whatever it may be. They let you finance everything specifically with the Apple Card, down to like a phone case or screen protector. And, as a result, these co-branded companies generally don't care about the bank's risk tolerance in that. Namely, they want to cast a wide net because anyone can buy an iPhone. They come in at all different price points. So they want everyone to have access to this card, and they want much higher credit limits because if you're using the Apple Card to finance your iPhone on a yearly plan or something, and they only gave you $1,000, well, that could easily be your entire credit limit that you can no longer use that card. So obviously, they want you to have a high credit limit. So you take all this into effect and you look at these numbers from 9 to 5 Mac, which came out earlier this year in 2023. It is somewhat telling here. So more than a quarter of Goldman's card loans have gone to people with FICO scores of 660, which is definitely subprime. If you look at charge-off rates, which is when people don't pay and the bank kind of just gives up on it, has to write it off or take it as a loss, they're double Chase and Bank of America. And they had, again, this is older, but at the time they had about $16 billion in loan balances. Now, of course, this article goes on to call it nickel and diming, but one of the bigger pieces of the Apple Card is they don't charge any fees. They charge interest, sure, but there is no late fees, there's no annual fee, there's no foreign transaction fees. All the other ways banks make up for this and kind of hedge risk on fees to a degree. Now, granted, if your quarter of the people aren't paying, or 2.6% are charge-offs, and you wouldn't have got those late fees anyways, but still, you get the point. They're losing out. And there's probably one more factor in this that, the Apple Card is designed to go through Apple Pay, the NFC tap to pay on your phone or your watch. Well, Apple wants to do that because Apple takes a cut in that transaction fee. So you have a little bit less. That money has to come from someone's pocket. It could be the bank, the payment processor, the payment network, which is MasterCard. But basically, Apple gets a cut, which makes it a little bit less money in swipe fees than you would normally see in a credit card. So if you take all of this plus, a company that's been around for a long, long time in Goldman, but new to the retail, consumer retail space like this, well, then yeah, I can kind of see how they might not be making a ton of money this far in, and I think we've seen stories about them wanting to shut down that whole division, okay? So that's kind of the Cliff Notes version of how we got here, give or take. So American Express, they're looking at selling this to American Express. Now, of course, the articles all say, well, it's just preliminary discussions, nothing set in stone. For this to get out, it's probably more than just a phone call to the Amex boss to see if they'd be interested. However, I don't think this is I don't think American Express would be a good suitor for them. I don't think this is going to work, and I'll give you 4 people who I think would be much better suitors for this. So why not American Express? On the surface, it seems like American Express would be fine because you kind of can see the brands being similar, status-wise. But really, Apple, again, I'm a sheeple. These are, studio displays. There's a phone. Like, all this stuff is Apple stuff, basically. But Apple is kind of like a Target, man. Like, in the sense that, like, Target is the same thing as Walmart, except Target figured out first they should care about how their stores look and not be known for the people of Walmart, how Walmart was. It's not nearly as fancy as they want to come off, but partnering with American Express generally has that, clout about it, if you will. But this reminds me more of like the Apple Verizon deal when the iPhone first came out, when you have 2 very strong companies in their own respective industries, and they don't really want to make concessions that the other one wants, and they don't really feel the need to make concessions that the other one wants. I mean, everything that we just described about the Goldman Sachs deal, does that sound like something American Express would be interested in? American Express does not do subprime. Like, they don't. You need higher credit scores for that. American Express, they're known for annual fee cards. Their cash back cards all have caps. Even the 3% cards, 3% in grocery store cards have caps on them of earning, which is insane. So they're clearly... This isn't going to be what they want to do. They're going to want more control. They're not going to be wanting to issue these massive credit limits. American Express with, having limits already on how many credit cards they're going to give you. American Express having, pop-up jail and shutdown rules and financial reviews and things like that all go to the fact that they probably don't want to be bothered with this core customer base or to nearly take the risks that Apple would want them to take. So would they kick the tires on it? Of course you take a look. Would Apple be willing to stand down a little bit and say, hey, we got to ratchet down some of these credit limits and we can strengthen up, our underwriting portfolio? Probably not, because they don't really have to, because they could probably find someone who would do it. I think Goldman Sachs ended up getting pushed around quite a bit because you think, hey, I'm landing the Apple card, and you get pushed and pushed and pushed, and surprise, it doesn't make a ton of money for you. Also, the one thing I think American Express could look at is that Apple savings account. American Express has made pushes into deposit accounts, not well, in my opinion, but Apple savings account, I think, banked like $900 million the first week it opened, so maybe from that standpoint, but I just really don't think American Express is a good fit. And, American Express, this is probably part of the reason why they don't have nearly as many co-branded deals. I mean, they're known for the Delta and the Hilton co-branded. Sure, they've got Lowe's in there as well. They have an Amazon business card, but those are basically their partners, and, it's because I think they're a little bit more, higher bar to work with, and I think that's fine. So where should it go then? Well, 4 places, and I think the first one, which would be my bet, is Capital One. And I know Capital One doesn't necessarily fit the Apple aesthetic, if you will, but I don't really think that matters too much, honestly, to the masses. And I think Capital One could handle this because Capital One is known for underwriting subprime. Until the Venture X came out, that's what they did. They did subprime, student rebuilding credit, things like that. They did it. I think that 30% of their portfolio is subprime, actually, maybe even more. And I think they would know what to do with it. Now, again, they'd still probably have to issue more credit limits than they were comfortable with, but you can, make risk adjustments. You can pull credit limits from other places of the portfolio and move it over here, so you're just kind of offsetting risk, things like that. They've shown ability to get deals done. They signed the Major League Baseball. We haven't seen cards come from that, but they have started to reinvent themselves, and they were the sponsor of the All-Star Game. We assume cards are coming very soon. They've been, again, pumping up their Venture X side. So I think Capital One could step in. I think they're ready to handle this. They have the Walmart card. Walmart is a big brand. I know Walmart is kind of mad at them right now, but Walmart is a big marquee brand in retail. They have experience dealing with it. That's 2 brands. Walmart card is good. So I think Capital One would be a good one. I don't expect them to get pushed around as much, but I think they would be willing. It also solves a problem because I've always said Capital One doesn't have anything to sell to its customers. You can outgrow Capital One cards. The Quicksilver is not moving up to 2%. Saver is good, but it doesn't really get talked about too much. It is a good card. Also, adding in the Apple card, I think, makes you a major contender very quickly. Plus, you get the savings account as well. Capital One will be my first choice. Second choice, which I do not think will happen, but someone who could do it, is our old friend Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan Chase. Why? I think when it comes to co-branded non-travel cards, they're probably the best at it. Amazon card is great. The DoorDash card is good. Instacart is good as well. I mean, if you don't use the services, then these cards are stupid. But for the people who use the services, these cards are good. They all punch up at 4 to 5x back. Sure, there's something you'd like to tweak about each one of them, but for the most part, for their core thing, they're good, and they're all no annual fee cards. Number two, Chase has the ability to cross-sell, and make money. Jaimin has shown he will, burn a pile of money with his whole Sapphire Reserve thing when it launched. If he knows he can make money, he believes he can make money down the road, so they might do it. I don't know how the customer data sharing works, like if Chase would get access to emails and phone numbers to be able to cross-market to people. I'm going to guess Apple would say no to that, but if they could do that, then I think it'd be worth it. Additionally, Chase has shown that they will ratchet up their risk tolerance dealing with a marquee name and almost humble themselves down a bit. The Amazon breakup comes to mind last summer when Amazon was pretty mad that, hey, I don't care about your 524 rule. Okay, the Amazon cards quietly moved out of 524. Hey, you need to give our people more credit limits. Okay, quiet credit limit increases for a lot of Amazon Prime card holders. They will take on more risk. Now, granted, they probably look at their whole portfolio and say, where can we lower credit limits to move it over here? So it's still net the same risk, but they're willing to do it. They don't love the subprime as much, but you got to imagine with those co-branded cards, they are still casting a wider net. And I think one of the things Apple could concede on a little bit is like 660 is pretty low. You want to punch that up to 700 at least. I don't think that's unreasonable, and someone like Chase could prove it to them. So I could see them. I do not think it will happen, but they could definitely handle it. Two more wild cards or dark horses, if you will, in order will be Wells Fargo. I think Wells Fargo could do it. They're reinventing their whole credit card structure right now. They signed Bilt Rewards, and no one saw that coming. The Bilt card's a pretty good card. Granted, I wish they would add cash back as a redemption, but it's still a really good card and a good pickup for them. So to bring back your credit card portfolio, you have Bilt Rewards and you have the Apple Card plus whatever core Wells Fargo cards they're coming with. Could be good. You got to wonder about Apple's really big on privacy as a feature. You wonder how the Wells Fargo reputation plays a part into that. I think that would be up for consideration. And then the last dark horse would be Ally Bank, believe it or not. If you think about Ally, they bought the Allo Optimum portfolio a while back to get back into the credit card space. Those guys, Allo primarily was subprime as well and rebuilding credit. So when Ally took over the portfolio, they tweaked the cards a little bit. They had them as invite only to new customers. I mean, I've been an Ally customer for years. I haven't received an offer, which is fine because their cards suck. But, you could argue, okay, I've had some reps getting back into the consumer lending space through credit cards. Now maybe let me get a marquee name in there as well. I could see them potentially doing it. It's possible they know how to maximize the savings account as well, since they're known for higher yield accounts. They're kind of like the consumer standard, I guess, the one that people go to the most for higher rate savings accounts. They could probably manage that pretty well. So I think, though, out of those four, I still think it's Capital One. I cannot see the American Express. I see the appeal to American Express and why on the surface it looks fine, but everything we know about American Express leads me to believe that American Express will sit down, American Express will put out an offer sheet, and they won't budge on it, maybe budge on one or two things, and Apple being $1 trillion company will say, well, now we think we can do better over here. Again, iPhone and Verizon back in the day, how they ended up with Singular. Now later they did come to an agreement, and I think as a result, the 4S was like the best-selling iPhone ever, at the time anyways. So I just don't see the American Express appeal, honestly. And we might not even want American Express because their card rules anyways. Having like 4 or 5 cards could be an issue for some people as well. So anyways, guys, that is how I see it. I think this is a fascinating story to watch play out. And of course, Apple probably has final sign-off on where they actually move, regardless of, Goldman owning the contract in the portfolio. So we'll have to see it play out. Again, I'm a big Apple fan and a credit card fan, so I will keep my eye on it. Fire off down below. Let me know what you think about this. Am I totally wrong? Will Amex get the deal done and kind of, surprise us, or do you have a different dark horse suitor where you think the portfolio should land and could thrive at it? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Anyways, guys, if you like this one, drop me a thumbs up down below. If you found it particularly interesting, consider subscribing to the channel because we're posting content just like this every single week and right back here every Sunday with all the news you can use in the week that was in credit and finance. And of course, every single day over on ProfitableContent.com, where we have the latest bank bonuses, credit card offers, and news stories just like this. Anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this one. As always, thank you so much for watching, and talk to you very soon this week.